Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is episode 8. We will be talking about how week 7 of my accountability journey went. And I'm just going to say it plainly. I failed this week. I did. I didn't. I didn't bother to keep a checklist. I don't have a progress report, and I'm not going to spin it any other way other than to say I was sick. I had a stuffy nose that would not quit, a scratchy throat that made my voice sound like I'd swallowed gravel, low energy, foggy brain. I just felt lousy. Um, and when you feel like that, you don't feel ambitious. You don't feel driven. You don't feel like conquering 7 goals. You feel like surviving. And that's pretty much what I did. All right, so let's talk about pausing for a moment. For most of this journey, I have been very disciplined about checking boxes, tracking, reporting, holding myself accountable. This week, I didn't have it in me. I didn't lose sight of my goals. I just didn't have the energy to chase them. There's a difference between quitting and pausing. Quitting disconnects you from the goal, whereas pausing maybe more acknowledges reality. My body needed a rest, so I gave it a rest, not dramatically, just practically. So here's what actually happened this week. Um, I didn't make progress on most of my 7 goals. I didn't push the workouts. I didn't pursue new AI initiatives. I didn't even move forward in the ways I typically would have. Um, I was more concerned about getting back to my baseline, but I did complete my episode 7 script. Um, and interestingly, I also caught up on scripture reading. I finished Exodus and Leviticus this week. When your body slows down, sometimes your mind has room for something a little bit different. I don't know. But, Exodus was a pretty dramatic book. You got Moses, you got the burning bush, Pharaoh, the 10 plagues, the Red Sea parting, Israelites wandering in the wilderness. Something that struck me was how often the Israelites complained even after being delivered repeatedly. They were freed from slavery and then they panicked about the food. They were rescued from oppression and then they complained about the water. They saw miracles and they still doubted. There's something deeply human about that, I think. They weren't necessarily evil people. I don't know, maybe they were, but yeah, some of them definitely were. But yeah, they were uncomfortable. Exodus is a story of deliverance, but it's also a story about how quickly we forget what we've already been carried through. Um, when I got sick, my brain immediately went into frustration mode. Why now? This is terribly inconvenient. I had built up momentum, all these thoughts were running through my head. And yet it's just a minor cold that's setting me back. So I think perspective matters. Now, Leviticus, on the other hand, it's a very detailed book. It goes into a lot about the laws, sacrifices, the priestly duties, what's considered clean versus unclean. Gave a lot of instructions about how to live distinctly. It's not a casual beach read, but some of what stood out to me was that Leviticus is about order, structure, um, holiness through discipline. It's about intentional living, even in small daily acts. It's very meticulous. And I think that's part of why it paired well with a week where I had none of my own structure. When my normal routine fell apart, I was reading a book entirely about structure and boundaries. It's quite a contrast. Um, but let's address the break I took from carnivore, and then moving on. So something I debated myself with about whether to include this week was that while I was sick, I stepped outside of my carnivore plan for a few extra days. Um, as you well know, I didn't do carnivore during my trip to Iceland, but because when I got back, I got sick. I just kept going with it. To be honest, I did feel a little guilty, but another part of me quite enjoyed it, and maybe that's the part I feel guilty about. I don't know. There's something comforting about eating outside the rules when you just don't feel good. It feels like relief and it's easy. I don't believe carnivore is unsustainable, but I do believe we all make choices. And I made a choice this week, not accidentally, but very consciously. I knew I would go back to my plan. Was it a failure? Yeah, some people would say it was definitely a failure. I see it as more of a temporary break to reduce stress while I was already physically depleted. When you're sick, your stress load it's already elevated. So I mean, I chose to lower the pressure where I could, and now I'm back on plan. So no drama, no identity crises. I just made a new decision, followed by another new decision. I want to talk about something a little bit bigger here, too. Accountability is a massive motivator. There's research backing this. The American Society of Training and Development, ASTD, found that people have about a 65% chance of completing a goal if they commit to something, uh, if their commitment is made to someone else. Does that make sense? It jumps to 95% if they have a specific accountability appointment to report back. Um, I don't take that lightly. I don't think that's a small thing because I kind of use this podcast as my appointment, if you will, to report back to what's going on. There's a psychologist named Dr. Gail Matthews at Dominican University. She also found that people who write down their goals and send progress updates to a friend are significantly more likely to achieve them than those who keep goals private. Uh, Public accountability changes behavior, is basically what it boils down to. Why? Because humans are social. We care about consistency. I think we care about credibility. We don't like saying, yeah, I didn't do it. And this podcast has kind of become that for me. Even this episode saying, I failed this week out loud, it kind of does something internally because it's a little embarrassing. But it forces me to reset my standard and it forces me to seek some clarity. Now, I don't believe that recovery is the same thing as laziness. There's a strange guilt that comes with slowing down. I've experienced it myself over the past week, but especially when you've built momentum, you start thinking thoughts like, am I losing discipline? Am I getting soft? Am I making excuses? Because I mean, the whole name of this podcast is When You're No Excuses. So I have to be very careful um, when I do have a failure that I don't excuse it. Um, but much like healing is productive and sleep repairs tissue and rest regulates hormone and lower stress strengthens immunity, you can optimize performance while ignoring recovery. Even elite athletes build deload weeks into their programs. Your body will force rest on you if you don't schedule it. And I'm afraid that what happened to me is that I had been going, pursuing all these different things, going on trips, um, just, a minutia of things. And my body forced me to take a rest. So I took it. I'm not spiraling. I have not quit, but I am restarting. So week 7, while it was quiet, week 8 will not be. My goals, they're all still there. The vision has not changed. The structure returns right now, and honestly, restarting it kind of builds a different kind of resilience than never stopping. Anyone can grind when they feel good, but starting again when the momentum has cooled off, uh, I feel like that might be a form of discipline. And I'm not patting myself on the back by saying that. I'm just calling it out that this is the moment when we make progress. Not giving up is progress. So while Exodus shows us, people delivered and then disoriented, and Leviticus shows us people who were given structure to live intentionally, this week I experienced a small version of that pattern: disruption, then realignment. I got sick, I rested, I read, I reflected, and I made a few conscious choices outside my routine. But now I'm back. No more theatrics, just overcorrection, or no overcorrection, rather. I just want to move forward. So if you're in a week like mine where you're experiencing some low energy, you're feeling off track or frustrated, just take a pause, give yourself some time to heal, then restart. That's not weakness, that's maturity. I'll see you in week 8.